And a very good morning to you watching the Morning Cafe show. This is TV47. I am Shiksha Arora, and in case you've just joined us, well, you can find us on Facebook, on social media. That is at TV47 Kenya, at Shiksha Arora. You can also find us on X at TV47 News. Talk to us, tell us where you're watching from. The WhatsApp number is 0793-267-279. You can also call in live on 0795045864. Now today, right now, we're going to be discussing all things hypertension. And if you're wondering what exactly hypertension is, if you've never heard that term before, or you already know what that is and are currently going through that condition, or you know somebody who is experiencing hypertension, well, don't you worry, we've got Dr. Victor Ngani in studio. He is Medical Director at Dr. Rasik Kantaria Jalaram Medical Services. And of course, he will be taking us through this topic, a very important one as such here in Kenya, because the statistics say that it is quite common to experience hypertension, but also, you know, how do you manage it? So with me, I have Dr. Victor. Good morning to you, Dr. Victor. How are you today?
Good morning, good morning.
How's it going? All good?
All good, yes.
Yes, good to have you here. Now, today we want to talk about hypertension. Of course, this is a term that we hear at some point in our lives. We know somebody who is experiencing hypertension. So we'll start off with the first question. What exactly is hypertension?
There's a simple answer,
yes.
Aurora. The simple answer is high blood pressure, which is your pressure is elevated. But what does that mean?
Yes.
You see, your blood pressure is what allows your blood to go through the entire body. So if you think of it like a farm, you are a farmer and you need to ensure that all your plants get some water, get irrigated, get nutrients. So you're going to have probably a water supply system, ensure that the tank is a bit high up so that the water can flow to every part of the farm.
Okay.
The same thing with your body.
Okay.
So your heart becomes like the central pump that is pumping blood throughout the body. For the blood to get there, then you need some level of force that is pushing that blood through your system to get to every corner of your body, and that's essentially what blood pressure is. Now, high blood pressure is when this value goes up beyond the normal range. Now, what is the normal range? Now, this is an interesting one, Shiksha, because for the longest time, we used to say that high blood pressure is when your blood pressure is above 140 on the higher side and above 90 on the lower side. But that has changed now. Now, we are saying that your normal blood pressure, the higher one should always be below 120. Oh. And the lower one should always be below 80. Okay. So this is what you're going to discuss. Okay. Now, why do we have two different values? Yes. So there's a time your heart is beating, it is contracting. There's a time it's relaxing. So when it's beating, the force is higher. Right. That's the higher value. We call it systolic. And when it's relaxing, it's a lower value called diastolic. Right. When it's resting, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Now, why exactly is hypertension also known as the silent killer? You know, people discuss it, and when we're talking about it, and they say, especially in the medical field, it's quite alarming when you have high blood pressure for long periods of time, and they say that it is potentially a silent killer. Why is that?
I don't know how we can make a big caption saying silent killer for guys to understand this, because many diseases will kill you, and you'll know they're killing you because you feel so unwell. You say, oh, doctor, help me, I'm feeling unwell, this problem here. Hypertension doesn't do that. It causes serious, irreversible, life-threatening damage, but you feel nothing until it's too late. So one of the common misconceptions that you're going to hear from the public, someone will tell you, I know when my pressure is high because I feel a headache, I feel pain. By the time you're feeling anything from high blood pressure, it's because it's getting too late. But Aurora, I didn't mention something quite important. When we speak about high blood pressure, we need to classify it a little bit because there are different levels of elevation, and that means something different. So we've said your normal pressure is, the upper one is below 120. Yes. Now there's a time when it's slightly elevated, between 120 and 129, and the lower value remains below 80. We call this pre-hypertension, or slight elevation in blood pressure. And then we have stage 1 and stage 2 high blood pressure. Okay. So in stage 1, the upper value is between 130 and 139, and the lower value, so it's the lower value is between 80 and 89. And then stage 2, the upper value is above 140, and the lower value is between above 90. there's one more stage, Shiksha. And you'll be surprised to find guys are working with this stage and they feel they're perfectly normal. This is when you have a hypertensive crisis.
Okay.
This is when the upper value is above 180 or the lower value is above 120. There are many, many people today who, when you take their pressure, it's way above 180. They're in crisis, they just don't know it because you haven't spoken enough about it.
Right. And how common is hypertension, especially here in Kenya? I'm sure, you know, in the hospital when people come, as you say, there's some people who actually have blood pressure that's higher than 180, which to me, if you ask me, that's your time bomb. You know, time is ticking for you.
Would you believe it if I told you globally, more than 1 billion people, more than 1 billion people globally have high blood pressure.
What?
This is how significant it is. And you know, it's getting worse because...
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is it increasing in prevalence?
It is increasing for different reasons. The first is that as a population, the factors which we're going to look at that promote increased blood pressure are things that are becoming more prevalent. We look at what are these things we are doing in our lives that's making, that are risk factors.
Diet, maybe?
Diet, of course. You're going to have things like diet, obesity, lifestyle choices. I know we'll come to that question, but definitely it's on the rise.
Okay.
Also, there's slightly the conversation about the change in diagnosis. Now we define it a little bit lower, but certainly hypertension is on the rise.
Right. So, I mean, you have mentioned the reasons why people get hypertension, the causes of hypertension, but what are the primary causes of
what we call essential hypertension?
Okay.
Hypertension, because as time goes by, there's a tendency for your pressure to creep up gradually, and I'll talk a bit about that because it's important. And then there's a second group, about 10% of the time, your pressure is up because of something else that you have, a different illness. So 90% of the time your pressure is up, not because of an illness you have, but because of several factors therein. But 10% of the time, there's a natural cause that is making your pressure go up. I'll start with the 10%,
yes,
which we call secondary hypertension. A big culprit in this is the kidney. Any form of impact to blood flow to the kidney will cause your pressure to go up significantly.
Yes.
Why is this? Your kidney plays a very important role in regulating your blood pressure. So anytime it senses reduced blood flow to the kidney, it assumes that your pressure is low and does something to bring that up significantly.
Right.
So anything affecting the blood vessel of the kidney, the blood flow to the kidney, sometimes you may get serious infections in the kidney as a young child that cause scarring of the kidney, and as a result, then your pressure then goes up. So the kidney is just one possibility.
Okay.
The second one that is very common, and you may hear a lot about it, is the thyroid gland.
Yeah.
And the way the thyroid gland works is it produces certain hormones that excite the adrenaline kind of hormone in your body. So the hormonal system, there are many, many hormones in this area. The thyroid gland is a very good example where you have increased thyroid hormone, which increases the release of what we call the adrenergics and the adrenaline and so on in your bloodstream, and you have pressure going up significantly.
Yeah.
There are other issues. For example, there's a big blood vessel that transmits blood from the body. It's called the aorta. You can be born with a defect where it's narrowed, and that narrowing, there's a system through which it causes high blood pressure, and several of these. So it's important then for all people to know, and even doctors, that whenever you see a patient who has high blood pressure, then you need to investigate the cause of that.
Okay.
First and foremost, even though it's more common to have pressure that's just elevated, 10% of the time, there's something that can be identified, and if that cause is treated, then pressure can come down.
Okay.
Another that I didn't mention are tumors that secrete, some of these adrenaline-like substances, and it can be detected and then addressed, and it's important to pick that early. Now, if we come back to the primary hypertension or essential hypertension, or hypertension that happens just because with time, there are a couple of things as well. We don't fully understand the precise mechanism, but we now know there's something called the sympathetic nervous system. Basically, the way your body reacts to circumstances. If you become anxious, for example, sorry, my apologies for this.
No worries.
If you're You become anxious.
And nervous.
You're nervous, for example, your pressure is going to go up a little bit, your heart rate is going to go up. So that system gradually is responsible for some elevation.
Okay.
The kidney, again, plays a very important role.
Yeah.
There are issues like genetics that have an important role in how you handle these kinds of conversations.
Right.
And there's one more, which we call white coat hypertension. And white coat hypertension is your pressure is just elevated when you're at the doctor's office, but it's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Going about your
Okay.
business, yes.
So, you have mentioned that, of course, these are some of the primary causes that that lead to hypertension. But in reality, are there certain groups of people who are at a larger risk? Are there factors that affect your chances of getting hypertension? For instance, your age, your ethnicity, your family history, your gender. Maybe there are some people who are at a higher risk rather than others.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is well established now. So the first and the most obvious is age. As
Yes.
you grow older, the risk of getting high blood pressure is significant.
My dad actually has hypertension, and we have been trying to get him to take medicines. So maybe if he's watching this, he will understand how important it is, because I feel like people have that mindset that, yes, I have high blood pressure, but I'm okay. I'm living about my life. I'm going about my day-to-day routine. But as you said, it is, as I said as well, silent killer, and that's what everyone says. Doctors talk about this.
When Mary asked me to come in for this show, I remember we discussed this sometime back, fairly, not a very long time ago.
Yeah.
And I thought, have we not discussed this before? Then it struck me again that this is something we can hardly talk about enough.
Enough, true.
Because the real problem is not even this conversation. And many people actually know their pressure is up.
Yeah.
But they feel perfectly fine.
So they don't want to do anything about it.
Yeah,
they don't want to take
because
medication.
They don't understand what's going on. So let me explain what's going on while your pressure is up.
Okay.
If you want to, you're a lady, so maybe it will not apply to you as much, but if you wanted to build muscle, what do you think you need to do, Shiksha?
Eat protein.
Protein, okay, but
go to the gym.
Go to the gym, yes. And how long do you think you have to go to the gym for?
Oh, consistently.
Consistently.
It has to be over a period of time.
But if you're consistent and you wanted to get some serious muscles, you'll lift and you'll actually get big muscles.
Yeah, lift heavy.
Lift heavy. Now, when your pressure is up, your body, your blood vessels actually have a bit of muscle in them.
Okay.
Especially the arteries, which is the blood vessels that take blood to the rest of your body. There's a certain pressure it's been built to sustain. But then when your pressure is elevated, then those muscles are literally going to the gym. And they're going to the gym every single time your pressure is up. Imagine that consistency. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. Those muscles are getting thicker and thicker. Now, getting thicker is not good for them. They don't want to get thick.
Okay.
Because when they get thick, there's a bit more resistance.
Yes.
Blood flow is not as easy.
Yes.
And then the person who is passing the blood through this thickened vessels,
yes,
which is the heart, is also forced to go to the gym to ensure that blood is passing. So every single second that your pressure is elevated, these vessels are being damaged. Now, this damage will affect every organ where there's a blood vessel. And which organs are these? Every single organ in your body. Your kidneys, right now, anybody who has kidney failure, about half the people with kidney failure, high blood pressure is a factor in that conversation. Any person you hear who has a stroke, often blood pressure is part of that conversation.
Yes.
When you see a heart attack, blood pressure is that conversation.
Yes.
And you know what? Most of these guys are perfectly fine until the stroke happens.
Yeah.
They're perfectly fine until the heart attack happens. And then now it's downhill from there.
Yeah.
The example, and forgive me guys if I'm very direct in this conversation, that would be given is a high flyer.
Yeah.
A person who is a high achiever in society, top of the class, maybe honor student who's really grown up the corporate ladder, very effective, forceful, sharp person. Then one day in his 40s or in 50s, he just collapses.
Yeah.
And, when you have a CT scan done, there's a bleed in the brain. What happened? He had a bleed. He had high blood pressure that he didn't know about. And as a result of that, someone who had a bright future, who was independent, suddenly has to, and if he's lucky that is, because these kinds of strokes can be catastrophic as well, then now suddenly he can no longer work.
Yeah.
He has to be taken out of bed and taken out. It's
life-changing.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
Remember what I said. If your pressure is above 180 or above 120, the lower side, then you are in a hypertensive crisis.
Yes.
I promise you today, there are people in society who know, and not the first time, that the pressure often goes above 180, and they're perambulating the planet, because the level of trust, I think, on doctors or just understanding has not been there. And I'm encouraging you, if you're hearing me now, I don't know which camera I should look at to say this one.
Yeah.
If you find your pressure is elevated, please take it seriously.
Okay.
Because these changes take time. By the time you're getting some of these complications, it's not a day, it's tens of years, maybe 10, 20 years. But when those changes happen, there's nothing you can do to reverse them.
Yeah.
Life is long, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely. Right, so as we continue having this conversation with Dr. Victor, remember, if you want to ask any questions about hypertension, about blood pressure, you know, if you have high blood pressure, you are currently feeling a certain kind of way, and you know that your blood pressure is not in the normal range, please do feel free to ask those questions. You can call us live. The number is 0795 045 864. Dr. Victor is in studio and he will be answering your questions. So yes, don't feel shy. Let's have this conversation. We are talking about hypertension, which is high blood pressure, and Dr. Victor will be very, very able to answer your questions. Now, Dr. Victor, let's talk about the fact that hypertension is asymptomatic. We discussed this in the beginning, right? So it's not like you will experience it unless, of course, you start feeling a certain kind of way, but that comes after a period of time, yes, after some time of having hypertension. So what are some of these symptoms that somebody should look out for so that they can diagnose that they actually do have hypertension?
So I'll be very clear about this.
Yeah.
If you're looking out for symptoms, you're also writing a will, and you're also saving or selling property to get yourself through ICU and some excessive.
Wow.
So the answer to that question is none.
There are no symptoms.
Okay, that's the answer I want the public to drill into their heads. There are no symptoms of high blood pressure.
Okay.
By the time you're getting headaches, you're getting fatigue, difficulty breathing, weakness on one side, that is the sign of end organ damage. The pressure itself is causing no symptom. What you're feeling now is damage to your organs as a result of pressure.
Yes.
There is a small caveat to this conversation. When you have what we call secondary hypertension, or hypertension that is the result of something else, then you can have symptoms of the underlying disease.
Okay.
So for example, when you have hypertension because of thyroid, elevated thyroid hormone, you may feel your heart is beating, it's racing quite a bit. You may actually see that the eyes are protruding. You may actually have something in front of, some swelling in front of the neck and so on. If it's something to do with the kidney, you may have a puffy face in the morning. Your legs are swelling. There's some sort of crystalline, features, like it's a sort of some deposits on your skin, some form of smell, but these are very rare. And even in these cases, when you have these kinds of symptoms from secondary hypertension, it's because the underlying disease itself has actually moved.
All right, Dr. Victor, we actually have a call, so let's get that call. It's actually from Kilifi. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Talk to us.
My name is Faisal from Kilifi.
Yes.
I kindly ask the doctor, apart from this normal medicine, we have this I call it herbal, like
garlic herbal medicines, garlic.
Yes, go on.
And garlic and honey and black seeds.
Okay.
We are told normally to use it. It has a lot in bringing down the pressure and, of course, the sugar in your body. Do you agree on those things?
Okay.
That's a very good question.
Okay.
In fact, it's a fantastic question that he has asked. The question of herbals. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of the medicine that you find on the shelves that are being sold in hospitals are actually made from some plant or the other.
Yes.
So there is significant evidence that trees and herbs form the foundation of a lot of treatments for numerous things, not just high blood pressure.
Yeah.
However, the process of identifying these substances and purifying them to the effect that you want is highly established. It requires many years of work, research, because you can have something that treats one thing, but causes a completely different scenario, for example, in another area. I'll give the example of cancer. There are so many substances in the world today that can actually kill cancer cells. The problem, they kill many other things as well. So there's no point of killing the cancer cells and damaging your heart or damaging your liver or your kidney. So the challenge with herbal medication is a lack of study, one, to confirm that it works, and then number two, to identify the side effect profile, so that when you're taking this medication, you know what to expect.
Okay.
Would you trade, for example, an elevation in blood pressure that can be treated by some drugs that cost 1,000 shillings a month for permanent liver damage that cannot be treated? So those are the kinds of conversations you need to know. Now, the second thing in herbal medication is the entry of opportunists. So everyone is an expert. They tell you, take this herb, it will cure these things, and you have no clue what is in those areas. Very early on, even before medical school, I saw someone who was being treated for epilepsy, the herbal medication, and he died. Wow. Because, and I wasn't even a medical student then, it's just something that, these kinds of things happen. Okay. Then there are the criminals who infiltrate this situation, and they stretch it a little bit beyond the herbal medication. And I've been told now there's something in society where people are telling you to hold some machine of some sort. It diagnoses everything you have. Yes. These are great public relations guys. They're very good in communication, but all of them should actually be in jail because there's no such machine in the world. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Daktari, and thank you so much for that call. We actually got another caller in. That's Harrison from Vihiga. Good morning, Harrison.
Morning.
How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, talk to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Daktari, for that explanation. I just have a question, around 2 or 3 questions. Okay. Where we have, number one, the age at which somebody is affected, because I have one of my friends who is 25 years old. And she had the swelling of the legs, and when she went to the hospital, she was told that she has hypertension, and I was like, at the age of 25. Yes. So what causes somebody at that young age to have hypertension? Is it because I've heard the doctor talking about kidney problem? Right. Is it that the person could be having a kidney problem? Okay. And then number 2. Yeah. We have the nifedipines, these medicine, the drugs that are given to the patients with hypertension, like nifedipines. Yes. Are they having a side effect to patients, and how often or how should the person have the medicine forever? Okay. This is those are my questions. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Harrison.
Harrison, those are actually brilliant questions, and I'm glad every so often now, the questions a couple of years ago weren't as good. These are pretty good questions. And yes. Paul Sana, that your child has hypertension at 25, and it's actually good that you've been able to pick this up so that you're able to address it. Now, actually, high blood pressure can start at almost very, very young, because there are different causes. As I mentioned, there are things like coarctation of the aorta, which is a developmental issue. Okay. At the moment of birth, actually, a child can have this kind of an issue and can cause pressure to go up significantly. Right. Now, the old pressure where we spoke about essential, where there's no real cause for it, actually it can start at the age of 20. Wow. And progressively, the older you get, of course, the higher the risk. Yeah. But from the age of 20, you can actually begin to see these kinds of cases. So that's very possible. However, the younger the person, the higher the likelihood that there is an underlying cause for that. And the kidney is an undiagnosed cause of this. Very early on in childhood, there's a certain kind of throat infection that can then also affect the kidneys and so on, and you can have scarring, you can get a lot of infections. Also UTIs. Yeah, UTIs, yes. They can affect scarring of the kidney. If it goes up all the way. All the way to the kidney. All the way to the kidney. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You can get an infection up in the kidney that causes scarring, and that scarring becomes a lifelong problem that causes high blood pressure. Okay. So for Mr. Harrison, the first thing is please have a proper analysis in a decent facility to assess. Don't just treat the blood pressure. check for all these possible causes.
Yes.
Once you're sure that they're not there, then you continue the medication.
Okay.
The second question was, should you take these kinds of medication for life? Do they have side effects? I'll not lie to you, every single drug we take has its risks.
Yes.
But the risks are studied. So something like some of these drugs you take for blood pressure, they've been studied for the longest time,
yes,
for decades actually, and patients actually run on them for decades. So what is the better risk? The better risk is to ensure that your pressure is well controlled. How long you take the drugs for most people, unfortunately, once you start medication, you may end up requiring medication for a very long time or entirely for life.
Actually, Dr. Let me stop you there because I had a question regarding that and I was actually coming to it, but I'm glad you've mentioned this. When you say that, once you start these medicines, but at what point does the doctor decide that you need to start medication for hypertension?
Good. So it depends on the level. So, for example, if you're in the pre-hypertension stage, which is between a blood pressure of 120 to 129,
yes,
that range, if you have risk factors, we may think about doing something about it. Certainly, we didn't actually give any medication below 130.
Okay. Between
130 and 140, many factors come into play. But definitely above 140, everybody is going to be on medication for this.
Oh, okay.
Well, the idea is not really medication.
Yeah.
The idea is to control your pressure.
Yes.
So there are many things you can do to actually improve your blood pressure, including things like exercise, diet change, those kinds of factors.
Lifestyle changes.
Lifestyle changes. The idea is not the medication. There are people who actually make adjustments to their lifestyle.
And it works.
The pressure drops.
Okay.
So once you achieve that, you don't need any kind of medication.
But what if it's inconsistent? Like one day you have very high blood pressure, maybe you've exercised, and that day it's lower. Then you eat something like high cholesterol, then it goes back up again. What do you do in such a scenario?
It doesn't actually work like that. If you have your pressure fluctuating so much,
yes, fluctuating.
That fluctuation often is going to be because of most likely something to do with some secretion of some sort of adrenaline-like items. It's actually almost when you tell a doctor that, they know what to look for.
Yes.
I don't want to speak about it as much, but they need to look for the cause of what we call labile blood pressures, where the
fluctuating blood pressure.
Because your pressure doesn't fluctuate like that. You may have a season where you've been quite effective and your pressure goes down for extended periods of time, and then you have a season when the control is not so good. Say, for example, you've lost everything you're doing, you're taking a lot more salt, but it's not like a sudden fluctuation.
Okay.
So every patient has a conversation with their doctor, and you really need to work very closely to assess the trend and the risks that you face, because the risks differ. There are people who would say at 130 take medication, at someone else at 130 we say, okay, fine, let's hold on because your risk is not as high. Let's make these kinds of changes. Now, if you need to take medication, it's because we need to lower your blood pressure. And if you need to lower your blood pressure, that's the target.
Yes.
Keep it down.
Yes.
If it means taking medication for the rest of time, go ahead and do that. The medicines that are being given now are safer, and generally they're effective. You'd rather not have it, of course, but if you need it because your pressure is up, then that is what you really have to do.
Okay.
Now, there's a question that was asked earlier that we forgot to respond to about garlic.
Yeah.
So the exception that we're going to make is for things that you normally consume, that is food.
Okay.
And you know that these things that either are antioxidants, your tomatoes, your green leafy vegetables, your garlic, these kinds of spices that are natural, are good for you in general. So there's no harm in taking those ones. Okay. What you want to avoid, someone tells you, imiti imetoka wapi, this rare tree from China. It's a rare tree from China, but you can get 1 billion doses if you want. You know, those kinds of things you really want to be very careful about.
Be wary of them. Okay, we have actually another caller. Good morning, how are you? And maybe you can start off by introducing yourself. Hello, good morning. All right, seems like we lost them, but yes, we'll probably get a call from them. Remember, if you'd like to be a part of this conversation, please do call us live, 0795 045 864. That's the number. And of course, if you have any questions regarding high blood pressure, you can ask Dr. Victor. Right, Dr. Victor, you were telling us about things that you ingest, right? So we do know that you can make certain lifestyle changes to be able to manage your hypertension. Maybe you can highlight what these are in specific. You had mentioned exercise. as being one of them. You know, depending on what you eat, also like salt is something that causes high blood pressure. Maybe you can tell us how to manage that as well, and just give tips on how people can manage it at home before it reaches the level of having to take medication.
So the approach to this will be what we look at in terms of the risk factors. And,
yes.
So that is a really big one, and in that we'll talk about things you consume, and there is the conversation about excessive salt intake.
Yes.
Where, for example, you're going to add salt in your food. You know, on the table, for example, you'd rather have salt cooked and just have moderate intake. So there's a time we used to say, don't take salt, but that's not useful either, because it makes food very bland. Everything in moderation is desirable.
Okay.
If you take foods that are rich in, can I say, unsaturated fats, that's not a good thing. If you have deep fried foods, processed foods, anything that has, you know, would promote obesity.
Meat, red meat?
Red meat in excess is definitely not ideal, those kinds of conversations.
Okay.
On the flip side, you want to take lots of green leafy vegetables, balance your diet, everything in moderation. When you take salt, have the salt cooked, remove the salt from the table later on. There are people who will tell you to actually cut that down significantly. But again, what I promote as an individual doctor, is what is sustainable long term. So it doesn't really put you in a place where it's such a strain to make these kinds of decisions.
Okay. I'll have to stop you there. We actually have another caller, otherwise we might lose them. We've got Lillian from Rongai. Good morning, Lillian. How are you?
Yes, good morning. How are you?
I am good, thank you. Talk to us.
Yes, I just have a question to the doctor.
Absolutely, go ahead.
I'm on medication for the hypertension. And that's for the last 7 years.
Okay.
I always do my routine checkup every year. They do everything.
Yes.
And after getting the result, everything seems to be okay. My kidneys are okay, colostoms are okay.
Okay.
My weight is okay. So my liver, everything, is okay. So I cannot understand why, if everything I do, the body examination, everything is okay, but now my hypertension is still there. So I'm always on medication. So I always wonder what could be the problem is. Is it maybe the genetic from the family, or what is it all about?
Okay, thank you, Lillian. Yes, Dr.
Okay, thank you, Lillian, because you sound like you're very health conscious. You keep checking all these things and you know what your results are, which is good. And people can learn a lot from Madam Lillian. If your pressure is still high, then it means the risk is still there. Remember what I told you is that it takes years, normally tens of years, 10, 20 years. So even though you may see everything is perfectly fine now, if you don't control the pressure, it will not remain like that consistently. And now there are newer ways to check for damage. For example, in the past, we'll check kidney function just by doing kidney function tests. But by the time that is abnormal, it's already very late.
Yes.
Now there's something we can do called urine microalbumin to tell us how proteins are passing in urine. And please note that if you have high blood pressure as an individual, have that test done regularly, at least every year. Because if that value goes up a little bit, it means you're already beginning to experience some level of kidney damage.
Yes.
Again, it's important to have someone check your heart, because what happens with high blood pressure is that the heart begins to thicken over time. So whereas the normal tests look normal, your ECG may not look bad, there's no heart attack ongoing, there are these changes going on behind the scene that are problematic as well. You can also have your eyes checked. So this is the next level of assessment to catch the complications early. Now, in terms of your pressure remaining high, two things. Please confirm that you have checked for secondary hypertension, because this can still happen at any age, that there could be something that is causing your pressure to be up. If those have been checked for and there is nothing, there is just what we call essential hypertension, and your pressure is still up despite medication, it means that your medication is not optimized.
Okay.
So your doctor needs to work very closely with you. He may change your drugs, or he may add additional drugs. But remember that the target is normalization of your pressure.
Okay.
Some people, lifestyle changes alone is enough. Other people want drug. Other people need 3 drugs.
Wow.
Whatever the situation, the target remains the same. Normalize the blood pressure.
Right. Now, I wanted to actually go to that particular... before we get to that, another caller. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm
Yes.
okay.
Tell us, maybe you can tell us your name and where you're from.
I'm from Liga. My name is Lumumba.
Yes, talk to us.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Daktari.
Uh-huh.
At the age of 20 years, I was diagnosed of having hypertension.
Yes.
And
I'm struggling to hear
from
him.
then I was introduced to medicine. I've been using medicine, hypertension medicine. And from then, like for a period of 40 years,
Yes.
my blood pressure never went down below 140, 140. Normally, it has been 147 for almost 40 years, 147, 105 down there.
Okay.
So it has been like that for a period of 40 years until last year, but one. So there is a problem that I got. I woke up one morning and I felt very dizzy. I could not stabilize for, that was 2000, that was last year early.
Yes.
So, and from then I went to the hospital. They tried to bring it down. They fought it so hard. So when it came to normal, they normalized it. When it's normal now, I don't feel okay. But when I stop taking medicine and let it go up to the level where it was, 147, then I stabilize. But when it is just normal, the normal blood pressure, like 120 there, 80, 85, up to 90, I can't stabilize. But if I leave it to go to 147 up to 150,
Yeah.
and down there it is 107, I'm okay, or 105. So can I know exactly what is that?
Okay.
Okay.
Did you understand the question?
I think you said, I think I got the
gist of it.
The gist of it.
Yeah.
He's been on medication for 40 years, and his pressure for the longest time never dropped below 140.
40, yes.
But then lately, the instances when his pressure goes down, looks like it's normal. In that instance, he's not
Feels
feeling,
okay.
He doesn't feel okay when it's low.
Oh.
Until it goes up again, then he feels a bit better.
Oh, okay.
So it's an important point because 40 years he tried to bring the pressure down, it didn't quite work, and now that instances when it drops a little bit. Here's what happens. Initially, your pressure is going to be high,
Yes.
even without medication, and it will remain high for some time. As, for example, I'm not saying that's what happened in this case. I'm giving this as an example to many people. The heart will continue to enlarge like a balloon, because it's compensating for the pressure.
Yes.
There's what we call, what's the best way to put this? It can accommodate these kinds of changes. It allows, it compensates. But then at some point, the ability to compensate, it becomes so overburdened that it actually gives up,
Okay.
which is called decompensation. At that moment, then the opposite happens. Your heart is no longer able to sustain that pressure and you begin to have
Yes.
lower pressures.
Yes.
In this instance, your pressure is now low, not because you're getting good control,
Okay.
but because your heart is failing. And that will come with other complications. I'm not saying that's the situation for Mzee. I want to be very clear.
Yeah.
The doctors have to assess. But if you have been unable to achieve long-term good pressure control, one of the organs that will be complaining in future is going to be the heart.
It's your heart.
And that may cause your pressure to be low. Not because you are getting good control, but now because you are in that phase when you're getting symptoms, because the systems are not working as they should.
Okay, so what is your advice to him?
Yes, so the first thing is to just have a proper assessment, starting with the heart,
Okay.
cardiovascular system, and see if there's something going on there that needs to be assessed clearly. Because normal pressure should not make you feel unwell, and if you're feeling unwell, it's because you're getting symptoms that are related to a dysfunction in the cardiovascular system.
Okay.
For sure, 40 years plus is a long time. Clearly, he's also a gentleman who has been able to follow through with his medication.
Yeah.
And again, it's important to note that for some people, they may have very significant symptoms at 140. Other people are going to get pressures of 170 and they don't have symptoms. In terms of organ dysfunction, they're going to get dysfunction early and others don't do that. Now, it's also important to say something else, that when we talk about getting to normal, that is the end goal. But even if you don't get to normal, but your pressure drops by some amount, that alone is beneficial. In fact, just a 5-unit drop in your pressure gives you tremendous benefits.
Okay.
So don't be discouraged if you drop your pressure, say, from example, from 160 to 150, and you feel you've not achieved the normal. That's already some progress.
Okay.
Best to achieve normal, but if you cannot achieve normal, keep dropping.
All right.
That's already beneficial.
Thank you, Daktari. Another caller, we have Liz from Kisumu. Good morning, Liz. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yes, Liz, talk to us.
Yeah, I have a question for Daktari.
Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to know, sometimes my blood pressure goes up, especially when I'm annoyed.
Okay.
My blood pressure goes up, and with time, it also regulates back to normal. What causes that?
Okay.
I'm fine. I have a question for Mr. Daktari.
Yes.
I want to know, sometime when I'm annoyed,
Yes.
my blood pressure goes up.
Okay.
It can go even up to 150 something.
Wow.
But after a very short time, if I record it, it
Yes.
comes down. It normalizes.
Okay.
Yani when I'm stressed or when something annoys me, it really goes up.
Okay.
But with some time, it relaxes, and then when I relax, it comes back to normal.
Okay. Thank you, Liz.
Yes, Liz, you are 100% right in observation, and I'm glad you're able to pick that as well, which again confirms this perception that Kenyans are getting better informed and they're valuing their health quite a
It
bit.
seems like she has the
Blood pressure
machine
machine in the home, and she's able to check both times, which is very good. So I'm just hoping, Liz, you don't have the pressure machine at home because you're told your pressure is high, which happens a lot of the times. If the doctor has told you that, then it's important to keep that checked and make sure your pressure normalizes. But it's a fairly normal expectation because what we mentioned earlier, the sympathetic nervous system, whenever you get angry or get into this fight or flight mode, it reduces the adrenaline-like items in your hormones in your bloodstream, and that causes your heart rate to go up, causes your vessels to constrict, and that causes your pressure to be up. So when someone is very angry or annoyed, or pressures will go up, and even in stress. Stress is a very big risk factor, by the way, in high blood pressure. We didn't speak about it as well. Yeah.
Right. And how should someone who has hypertension actually manage their mental health, their well-being, their stress levels? Because obviously we do know that stress is linked to causing hypertension, and there's a correlation there. So like, how do you actually manage your mental health so as to avoid getting high blood pressure?
Isn't that the big question now in the, probably globally? Because mental health has become a big issue.
Absolutely.
Underdiagnosed, undersupported. And there's so many factors that are adding stress on people all the time. Look at the economic situation right now.
Yes.
Parents who just want to get by, and the school fees, there's all these burdens to pay, the jobs are sort of shutting. So all these things, how do you manage
NHIF,
SHIF. Now your salaries.
Yes.
And maybe you should say a word about that towards the end of this show. So all these conversations, there are so many pressures that differ. I mean, the different reasons. You may even just be trying to get into your own space and calm down, but things just bug you. And all these things have an impact. So, at a national level, if you can have in place policies that take away pressure from people who are just trying to get by, make sure that things like healthcare and education are affordable, and make sure that housing is available at a rate that could go some way. If you can look at our own environments and just make that work, the work environment, the process of getting to work, that would be useful. But then it's also important that when you find you're losing your joy, you're getting angry easily, to talk to somebody who can help you manage that a little bit better. You may actually be under significant stress and you can't detect that. So mental health is previously not spoken about, but in this generation we really need to, because addressing that can give you a lot more peace, help you be a lot more productive, which in itself is sort of a positively reinforcing kind of a process.
All right. Now, Daktari, what are some of the tools and resources that people can reach out to, especially when managing hypertension? Of course, we do know that you can get a machine at home, a blood pressure machine. Maybe you can also inform them on what other resources that they can do to manage blood pressure at home now before it gets to the stage where they need medical intervention.
Well, I do not recommend a conversation. If you already have high blood pressure diagnosed, I do not recommend a situation where you are exclusively doing what you're doing in the house. I really recommend early on, get in touch with the healthcare specialist who can walk with you through this journey. And now we don't just talk about the doctor giving you the medication.
Yes.
Talk to a nutritionist.
Okay.
Talk to a psychosocial counselor, and then have a doctor who can then keep track and walk with you through this journey so that you can manage your system very well. So that's the first thing that I'm going to say. But in the home, the things that you can do is please exercise. What does exercise mean?
Yeah.
Exercise means you do 30 minutes of something that makes you sweat at least 3 times.
It can be running, it can be walking.
Anything that makes you sweat, provided you're sweating, this is okay. Now, that is what we are saying in terms of exercise, but I have another approach that also would work. You know, one of the reasons people never meet their goals for the year is because 30 minutes is a lot for many people.
Yes.
You feel it's strenuous, it's hard to get up because it needs tremendous willpower. If you can't do 30 minutes and you're only doing 10, great. There was a time I was doing much younger. I was doing about 12 to 14 kilometers on the treadmill.
Wow.
It became so tedious. I couldn't wake up because I thought, it's so hard. So I lowered it to 8, and then I could do that for almost a whole year.
Amazing.
So do something
that's sustainable.
Sustainable. Do something. And over time, you'll realize that if you do it, start small. Later, you'll move from 8 to 9. Or even 8.5, but you'll sustain it, you'll enjoy it, you'll see the benefits.
Okay.
Watch your diet. Don't smoke. Smoking is just hazardous.
Drinking.
Limit, people say limit alcohol intake. If you can keep it at 0, great, but lower it to the lowest that you can, because excessive drinking sounds like it's a good thing. It's not actually. It damages your liver, damages your kidney. It kills brain cells.
Yeah.
If you don't need your brain for thinking, then it's okay. You can kill as many cells as you want. But if you're in a place where thinking is important for you, it makes sense to actually limit that as well, and affects so many other, functions in the body.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ari. Another caller in, Seth. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Yes, talk to us, Seth.
Yes, I'm from Herbal County. I went to hospital to see. And I was diagnosed with heart failure.
Okay.
Then I was told that there's accumulation of water in my heart.
Okay.
I was given good morning.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking from Herbal County, Ringa.
Yes. Seth, could you please mute your TV so we can hear you clearly? We are having feedback, so maybe lower the volume of your TV.
Okay. I was given.
Can you hear me, Seth?
I heard him say that he was diagnosed with heart failure.
And there was water in his...
There's some fluid in the heart. But I didn't understand the question he had in relation to this.
Blood pressure. Maybe we'll just wait. Okay, we've just lost him. Okay. But yeah.
But still, Seth, just to understand, you have heart failure, which is a common consequence of high blood pressure. I do not know the cause, but high blood pressure is one of the leading causes of heart failure.
Yes.
And you can have a fluid around the heart, and there'll be medication that is given to address this. Unfortunately, the heart is not the most forgiving kind of an organ. The changes in the heart tend to be very difficult to bring back, and so what we then do is get into managing that particular illness. And fortunately, there's a lot of hope, because if you work closely with your doctor and you strictly adhere to what has been recommended, then you should be able to stop worsening of the heart and actually get out of failure. So the thing about heart failure is that you have symptoms coming out of an acute problem. For example, this accumulation of fluid, but you can get rid of that fluid, then take some medication to reduce the risk of the failure happening. The problem is most of this medication is lifelong. So you want to work very closely with your doctor to make sure you don't get into failure, have regular checks, and make adjustments as requested. Again, you're already in that stage of failure. It's important to know that doesn't mean the end of your ability to function, but you have to work extra hard with your doctor to make sure that this doesn't get worse and you don't get repeat failure.
All right, Daktari, you know, we still have to discuss the fact that hypertension affects anyone, regardless of your age, you know, your gender. But before I get to that, I've got a call from Kitale. Daktari, today you're giving free consultation, but yes, we can understand why, because it's a very important topic and it affects so many Kenyans. Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, madam.
Yes, maybe you can introduce yourself and where you're from.
I'm Sylvester from Kitale.
Yes, talk to us.
I wanted the doctor. I've been on hypertension drug. Hello, are you getting me?
Yes, we can hear you. Tell us.
Yeah. So there comes a situation where you find sometimes you wake up very early in the morning.
Okay.
And you find a very sticking pain coming from, you know, the fourth toe.
Yes.
Especially of the right leg.
Pain in the right leg.
Pain in the fourth toe of the right leg.
Okay.
Especially where it joins the foot.
Okay.
And then sometimes it is followed by, you know, the calf muscles being numb.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then you'll find that when the calf muscles are numb, it reaches a time when the leg again, the whole ankle is also gets swollen.
Okay.
And then after 2 days, it disappears.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm on the drug.
All right. Thank you very much, and your observation is significant. So there are a couple of things. What I've understood is that you get some pain in the toe and the calf muscles become numb, and sometimes you have the ankle swelling and it disappears after 2 days. And this is when you wake up in the morning. So the first thing is that when you find your feet swelling or your face swelling in the morning, you really want to have your kidneys checked.
Okay.
Anytime you have high blood pressure for some time and you experience swelling, especially on the lower limbs or on
even
the
hands, right?
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Basically would be as a result of, can I call it, mishandling of fluid. The body's normal process of keeping fluid at a certain level may be impaired. The kidneys are number one in that conversation. There's also the heart, there's also the liver. Although in instances where your work is to stand long hours, then you can have pulling because of gravity, and this is not abnormal. So, however, in your setting, because of having had high blood pressure for some time, it's important to very closely check your kidneys.
Okay.
I'll give a comment about the quality of checkups. That's an important one. Then the second thing is the pain you're describing, and the calf muscles, the blood vessels that are affected everywhere, and especially the lower limbs. Please have your sugar checked as well. It's important because high blood pressure and diabetes tend to work very closely together. If your sugars are fine, that's good. If they're not, also have that addressed. And then the small vessels of the lower limbs should also be assessed. If there is any kind of swelling on the calf area, that should also be assessed. So these are significant issues. When you have, don't take them lightly, especially swelling, pain in the calf region, have those assessed. Now, I spoke about quality of assessment. And Kenya has come a long way in terms of healthcare. Unfortunately, the difference between a good hospital and an average one is very, very big. So it's important to be sure that at least once in a year you have access to a proper high-level facility where the assessment is concise.
Your full body checkup.
Not just full body, but the person you're going to is able to do is an expert, can do a proper assessment.
Okay.
Sometimes we can go for years to the small center that is underfunded, doesn't have enough healthcare specialists, doesn't have the equipment, and a lot of the treatment and diagnosis is made by feeling. We don't need to do that anymore. There's enough in terms of diagnostic support for me to tell you that I think this is a problem, but I can confirm it. Or I've checked, it's there or it's not there.
Okay,
and I recommend you get this at least once a year.
Thank you so much. So we'll take a short commercial break, but we will be back. And after that, we can continue having this conversation. As you can tell, there is a lot of feedback. There's a lot of questions, curiosity about hypertension, especially for you, Daktari. So please, we'd like you to come back and we'll continue this conversation and engage further. Until then, please don't go anywhere. We'll be back talking about hypertension. This is TV47. You're watching the Morning Cafe Show. Don't go anywhere once again.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m. The Grind, where business meets brilliance. It's not just about the ideas.
I was working as a shampoo boy. I used to wash clients' hair on the sink.
It's about making them happen. From big wins.
In primary school, when we would be asked what people want to be, I was categorical that I want to be a nurse.
To hard lessons.
The consoles change, the gaming equipment keep changing.
We cover it all. Tune in to The Grind, where every episode is packed with insights.
The person who is serving customers, always be a customer-centric.
Strategies.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
And stories to fuel your ambition. Don't just dream it, grind it. Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi.
Welcome back. You're watching the Morning Cafe Show. I am Shiksha Aurora, and right now we are discussing all things health. Our topic is hypertension, and with me in studio I have Daktari. His name is Dr. Victor. Thank you so much, Daktari. This has been quite an engaging conversation. Lots of questions about hypertension and, of course, how to manage it in this current age where there's a lot of stress that we get with our lives. Pressure is very high. Work, the economy. There's so many things, so many factors that contribute to hypertension, and we did mention how we can really regulate it and we can manage it. These include lifestyle changes. You had mentioned a couple of them: dietary changes, exercising 30 minutes a day. And aside from that, right, if somebody really wants to have good health, just in general, this isn't about hypertension, but this is about just making those lifestyle changes, especially as you get older, when you're in your 50s and you want to have a holistic approach to life. What are some of the things that you can do just to be able to be a well-balanced individual who is healthy?
Shiksha, the answer is pretty much the same thing. And that's the beautiful thing about these non-communicable diseases.
Yes.
Whenever we are here talking about cancer or hypertension or diabetes or high cholesterol, any of these things, you'll find that the same things
applies
across board. So what are these things? You want to exercise generally, and this is good not just for your physical health but also for your mental health and even for your marital status, for example. This kind of conversation. You have exercising, and as I've said, try and get 30 minutes 3 times a week. And if you can't do that, any kind of exercise is beneficial. Watch your diet. Eat something balanced. And in terms of that, having greens in your diet is very good for you. Reducing processed foods, reducing saturated fats. Any of these deep fried, very nice, fancy, tasty things generally are not good for you. You want to limit the kind of the salt intake that you have. Then you also want to ensure that you keep your weight at a decent level, especially central obesity. The weight at the center, it's something you really want to work on and bring that down. Do not smoke. Growing up, I think there's all these TV movies where the movie star, we call that starring, would have a cigarette puff, and it looked so cool, and people get into it.
And nowadays, there's a new disease. It's called the vape.
Vape, and even that has been shown to be. So avoid those things. Really, they don't add a lot of value to you. I think a lot of bright people follow the trend. You know, you want to look cool and hang in there. Would you just take a step back? And I think as a generation, we have to start celebrating strength. Strong people can withstand that pressure and do the right thing. We need to start celebrating the good things, because it's so much harder not to get into those activities now than to get into. And let's celebrate the young men and women who are saying we are powerful enough to chart our own path.
Abstain.
Because a lot of the people who get into these habits are doing it to fit in.
Absolutely.
Meaning that they're literally giving in to that pressure. And that is not strength.
Yeah.
Gen Z, there's a generation now that is saying we are strong enough to stand up and think for ourselves. You know, why am I smoking? What value is it adding to me?
Yeah.
Why am I killing my brain cells? And as I said, the only thing they need the brain for is to make government tenders at twice the cost. That doesn't need a lot of thinking. But if you need your brain to develop IT solutions, become a contributor, then don't kill your brain cells. Limit what you drink in terms of alcohol. But that requires inner strength, which I want to believe we can start celebrating. In the past, it's not celebrated. Those are some of the things that you can actually do to change, to live a healthy life. Drink lots of water, you know, the usual things. Find a healthy habit, things that release stress. Don't put yourself in stressful situations.
Right.
I used to get very upset in traffic because it's never that serious.
Yeah, it's never that serious.
Talk to somebody if you have to.
Right.
Yeah, have a regular check, but they get checked once or twice a year.
Speaking of checkup, you know, you are the medical director at Jalaram.
Yes, please.
Maybe you can tell us how they can reach you if they want to come for a checkup. Where do they find you at Jalaram Hospital?
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Rasik Kantare, Jalaram Medical Services. We're in Parklands, Westlands area, opposite the Oval. You can check out our website at jalarammedicalservices.org. You can also call our main line 020-501-2200. And I should mention, Jalaram Medical Services is actually a non-profit organization. When you come and see it, it looks very big and modern with all this super equipment, but a lot of that has been donated by the community, and therefore the organization is actually moving this agenda of being non-profit very seriously.
And it is quite affordable.
Consultation, 600 shillings.
Wow.
And you have the best doctors there. You're going to have a hemogram at about 700 shillings. You're going to see a specialist, Dr. Silverstein, Dr. Ivan Jenga, Smita Devani, Rajendra Chauhan, the cancer specialist there. All of them will charge you 3,300 for a consultation and so on.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
This is amazing. And as we wrap up, Daktari, you know, today the topic that everybody has been discussing is the move from NHIF to SHIF. And as a doctor, what are your thoughts on this?
That is very close to my heart.
Okay.
Because fundamentally, our country has some pretty good plans. And right from inception, a couple of people who really hate every Kenyan find a way to be in charge of that. So if we spoke about the idea of collecting a lot more so that we can cover everybody, which is the general principle. That's a good thing. That is what has worked in every system across the world, and that's where Kenya should head to. So the fundamental principle is good. Let us enhance what goes into healthcare so that everybody, regardless of their earning, is able to get good care. And I wouldn't have a problem with it paying that amount of money. The problem is, I've looked at the benefits and what is being proposed. I've looked at the implementation, and it doesn't. It's bad. What is being proposed as payment would be good if I would get care. If I pay that and I get covered, not just myself, but the person who cannot, Mama Mboga, wherever they are, can also get health care that is meaningful.
And you're okay with it?
Perfectly fine.
Yes.
But right now, what are we doing? An example is we want to do pay out outpatient care. 900 shillings per person per year. The last NHIF was paying 1,200 shillings per person per year, and it was so bad that the good hospitals couldn't touch it. So everyone who touched it, and please hear me, Kenyans, were people who were able to cut corners. They would take, for example, these people to come into their facilities. The first group, of course, there was a bit of collusion with some NHF officials, so non-existent facilities actually had very many patients. They paid millions of shillings for doesn't even exist. But those who existed would use this as a way to get patients for other services, which was unethical in its own way. But you'll never find the big hospitals touch it because it didn't make sense. So for a longest time, we said, please raise it, allow for some co-payment for this to work. Now, what have they done? They've charged more and they're paying out less. The second thing is the idea to outsource the health sector to a foreign country, which is really, really important at the point of the IT system and also the issue of claims processing. And no country does that. Do we not have enough experts in our country to do IT or to process claims? Do we need to outsource this in the space where our young people are struggling for jobs? So it's unacceptable. And then, of course, the big one, how are we paying 100 billion shillings for a system? I've tried to avoid speaking a lot about the politics of things, but this is unconscionable. If you look at...
I have to cut you short, Dr. because of lack of time. Unfortunately, our time is up. But don't you worry, we will definitely have such conversations.
So let me just say this. If we can correct how it's the benefits package, make the benefits meaningful, and then remove any trace, let people be patriotic in this way. Let us use everything that comes in for healthcare. It will be a good system. But as it's being rolled out now, there are quite a number of
issues. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Victor Ngani. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your expertise. You have been quite important in this conversation and just driving the message home about hypertension and how important it is to be able to manage it in early stages. And of course, even if it is something that is affecting you and you now have symptoms, it is good to get medical care and of course medical help as soon as possible. Thank you once again. We appreciate your time, and that's it for this particular segment. You are watching The Morning Cafe Show.